Welcome to Align Yourself podcast by Ebony Rose, a podcast where we have deep and eye-opening conversations with some inspiring individuals. I'm a mum with a wild past, and over the last few years, I've been on a journey transforming from a maiden to a mother, unlearning and relearning everything I thought I once knew, realizing we really know nothing at all. So come with me whilst I share my journey, have some sober D&Ms, and be prepared to have your mind blown. Lezly, you have scaled 2 8-figure businesses and you now coach and mentor women to do the same, all whilst navigating motherhood. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
My absolute pleasure.
Can you please take me on a journey to go back to the Lezly that you were and to who you are now, sharing with the listeners how you scaled 2 8-figure businesses?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible. You know, when I first built my companies, and I'm in different businesses now, and they're 7 figures in a way that's sustainable as a mother. But when I built my big businesses, I mean, 7 figures is still big, but I didn't really care about being a mum, to be honest. I had my son and put him in daycare when he was 6 weeks old because all I cared about, or the thing I valued the most, actually, I did care about my son and being a mother, but I valued money more because actually my safety was entwined in how much money I was making. I'm 38, my son is 7, so when he was 6 months old, I quit my job. I was making $500K to $700K a year as an employee for one of the largest recruitment firms in the world, and they told me that I couldn't take maternity leave. So the reason I didn't take mat leave was because they said if I took mat leave, I couldn't keep the business I had built. So I quit and started my own company. So with a 6-month-old, I scaled that company to 8 figures in the space of 18 months. Turns out that I was very naive and didn't actually understand commercial law at that point in time. This was like 8 years ago. And the shareholders agreement wasn't signed. So I'd built this big business, and the man that I'd partnered with who funded the venture intentionally didn't lodge the shareholders agreement. So I then would have had to have fought to get my share in the business. When we went to court, he actually said, I have more time and I have more money, and unless you drop this, I will keep coming after you until you have nothing. Essentially what's called legal bullying. So they know they're going to lose, but they know that they have more money and resources than you. So they essentially bully you out of a case. But then I started my own company, like quit on the Friday, started my own business on the Monday, and built that by myself to 20 million in turnover. But when I got to the peak of that career, you know, I had the Range Rover, the designer clothes, the picture perfect lifestyle on social media. And I woke up one day, it probably happened over a period of time, but it felt like I woke up one day and realized how unhappy I was because I wasn't a present mum. I wasn't a present partner. I had this big business and all of this outward success, but inwardly I felt guilty. I was 120 kilos. I was sort of suppressing my emotions by eating, and everything sort of crashed, or I self-sabotaged because I didn't want what I had built. I'd gotten to this peak of success and everyone told me that I was going to be happy when I got there, but I got there and I felt empty because I hadn't actually built this business or this life with what I valued. And I actually value being a mum. I love spending time with my son. I value being a partner. Yeah, I think the biggest lesson from that and the ways in which I build my businesses now and help women build their businesses now is I started these companies, so my coaching business and my virtual assistant business, with my exit in mind. What do I need to set up now to ensure that in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 5 years' time, whatever it might be, I can actually step back and enjoy the life that I've built, not be a slave to my business. And yeah, that's the medicine of the mistakes I made in my big business builds is I really got to see what happens when you sacrifice yourself for success in a very real way. I was the quintessential poster girl for, I was born into poverty, raised by drug addicts, or kept alive by a very dysfunctional family, lots of violence and abuse. I used the motivation to leave that reality to step into being successful, but then I got addicted to the success itself, and I didn't build a life I enjoyed. I built my life around my business, not the other way around, and now I build my business around my life, and I came into the business with that knowing, and this is why I can help so many mothers. I don't really buy into the excuse that I'm a mum that I can't do it, because if you're determined enough, you can fit your business around your lifestyle, not the other way around.
Wow. Well, Lezley, I put some questions together to get to know more about you and to be able to share your wisdom with our listeners. But I'm actually going to turn this whole episode around and I'm going to do it for me. So, Lezley, I'm a mum. I've got 2 young babies at this present moment. I have an 8-month-old and a 3.5-year-old. And I am always working on something. I've always got the ideas. However, I tell myself constantly that now's not my time. My kids need me. However, the fire is always burning to start the ideas and start momentum on them. However, I feel like if I were to start, they are going to be at a loss of my presence and my time. What would you say I should do knowing how precious our time with our kids are?
This is a very complex question, so I'm going to answer it as best I can. Do you know what you value? Family is obviously one, but do you know what you value besides that?
Freedom.
Okay. How do you get freedom if you don't have wealth? You don't. What I see happening often is especially, and I know you, I follow you, we've been in containers together. I know your heart. I know the woman you are to as much of a degree as I can through the interactions we've had. I would say that, one, you need to let go of what everyone tells you it should look like. And I want to say especially circles where it's like conscious parenting, for example, because if you didn't value freedom and you were quite happy to basically have nothing but be very present, then do you know what? Don't think about building a business. Don't think about making money. Just be a present mum and barefoot and live on little, basically. Very possible. But if you've got a values conflict, you value being a present mum, but you also value freedom, and you're not filling up your cup for this freedom part, which is your purpose, your mission, the impact that you want to have in the world, then you will subconsciously start to build resentment for your children. And it might not happen now. It might not be a now thing. It could show up in being short-tempered, getting frustrated easily, feeling like you're the only one carrying the load of parenting. But you're teaching your kids that it's okay to self-sacrifice. So if you're not feeding into freedom or your values, for example, what you're saying is, it's okay for me to put myself last because of you, which then means as they grow up, they are going to mirror, it's okay for me to put myself last. Now, I don't think mums should go out and work 9 to 5 jobs. That is not the solution. I don't buy into that system. I think where possible, we should work as little as possible and make as much money. But you need to have boundaries and structures that support what you truly want, not what you think you should want. And I say that because some of us think that because we want to be traditional women, perhaps, and have husbands that provide for us and be the home keeper and make the food and homeschool, but are we doing that because we value tradition, or are we doing that because that's what people tell us we should do? Or the image of a traditional wife is that. But the question I always ask myself and get women to ask themselves is, if this is all you were going to do for the rest of your life, would you be fulfilled?
No.
And most women wouldn't, but they think they have to because you're a bad mum if you're going to put yourself above your children. Now, I was the opposite end of the scale. I put my son in daycare at 6 weeks old and I regret that. Me and my partner have spoken about having kids. We're undecided on that, whether that's a yes or no, but the conversations we've had around that is I'm not putting him in daycare and I don't want to work as much. So I'm building the foundations of my business now so I can step out for 6 months and maybe work 1 day a week. On the flip side of that, you just need to understand what balance would feel good for you in order to have space for all of you. What we can so often do is what we call compromise. So we can compromise because I'm compromising on my vision, goals, mission because I'm a mum now. No, you're sacrificing. And if you start to sacrifice what you want for your children, it will get to a point where you will generally subconsciously start to feel resentful, because at some point they're going to go off and live their lives and not give a fuck about you. And in fact, they should. We don't want codependent children. What I see a lot of parents doing is building codependency because their whole identity is being a mum. So of course they're going to build codependent children because I need my child to depend on me because that's the only way I get worth. But we want securely attached children. We need them to know that they are loved, they are valued, that they are seen, they are heard, they are safe, but we want them to be secure in that. Otherwise, they're not going to go out into the world. They're not going to live their dreams and aspirations and become change makers, because they're always looking for our approval and our permission, because we are subconsciously doing the same if it's the only thing we give our time and attention to. Yeah, I often think we're waiting for permission, like permission to actually choose ourselves. Like someone tell me it's okay to put myself first because I feel shit when I want to do that. In my opinion, your children are mirroring what you're showing them is okay. And a lot of mums self-sacrifice and create codependency because it's safe. And if your children are dependent on you, then you can say, well, I didn't build my dreams because I was a mum. Or you can choose to build your dreams despite the fact you're a mum, because you're building balanced, securely attached children that aren't mimicking your need or their parents' need for mattering. Like, I matter because I'm a mum now. No, if you're securely attached in yourself, then you don't need your child's love. You want it, of course. You would do anything to protect and provide and to create safety for them. But if my son stopped loving me tomorrow, my identity wouldn't collapse. Because I'm not building codependency. I'm building as much as I can. I'm by no way perfect. Secure attachment inside of our relationship.
Wow, you tore my vision to shreds. And you hit the nail on the head, because takes me back to a moment when I was probably about 26 years old, and I met a new friend on the road traveling, and she invited me to her family home back in WA, and I flew from Darwin down to WA, and I walked into that family home, and there was a mum, a dad in a loving relationship. There was 3 kids, 2 of which had moved. She had moved on from home, and her mum I just looked at her and said, you are my goals. She was there every day to make the kids breakfasts and lunch and dinner. She knew how to cook anything that was in the fridge from scratch and to entertain and provide. And the house, you could feel the energy of the love inside that house. And it was probably the first time I'd ever witnessed or felt that feeling. And I, in that moment, was like, this is what I'm going to provide for my kids. And I guess in that moment too, I started to let go of everything I could feel I wanted to be in the world. Like only a few years ago, I was getting mentored to become a business coach, something that I love doing. I love talking about business. I love growth. I love personal development. I love healing. I love so many of the modalities. And I guess that's 100% what's happened. I've had kids, and now I think like I have to put all that on the back burner. So Lezly, what would you say I do moving forward to ensure I'm there for my kids and I'm there for my fiance as well? Because I also am aware that I am the best partner when he is looked after. I'm thinking about when he's out on the property, that I'm bringing him his coffee, or he is filling up his water bottle and providing lunch. And how can I step into those callings and start growing those businesses whilst not impacting their time of needing me?
I'm a traditional, we're not married yet, but we will be. I'm a traditional wife mindset too. So I drop my son to school. I'm home by 9. I'm finished by 2:30. So a bit different because I'm not homeschooling and my kids are a bit older. But for me, I only work in the hours of 9 till 2:30 because outside of that, I'm a partner and I'm a mum. So it's understanding what routine and what structure is going to work for your family as number one. And again, so we often think we have to sacrifice or compromise or give up something. In my opinion, building the empire together can be sustaining your husband so he can make all of the money. And if that gives you fulfillment, then that's all you need to do. You need to have a shared goal and shared vision though. And you also need to understand what it is you're actually contributing and what skills you might have to contribute to the bigger picture. You constantly need to have conversations about being on the same page in finances, in business growth, and in parenting. And then you build your business around those conversations and that structure. For example, rather than going, well, I want to make $1 million in my business, so I'm just going to have to work more hours and do more things, I say I'm going to make $1 million in my business, and these are my non-negotiables. I'll wake up in the morning and pack my son's school lunches. I will drop him to school every day and I will pick him up every day. Now, sometimes it means I don't go to his sports carnival. I mean, not sports carnival, his like sports training. and I'll get his grandparents to do that. But we're very blessed. I've got my ex-husband's grandparents who are very present in my son's life and very happy to support and look after him. If you don't have that, and a lot of people, I can just feel people going, well, I don't have family, so I can't make that work. You have to find a community that's going to support your vision. And you've got two choices in life. You can either sit there and assume that it's going to be a no, or you can ask and find someone that's going to say yes. So maybe it's a mum that, wants to make a little bit of extra cash to take, you don't have to pay her full wage. Maybe you're supplying everyone lunch and paying her $25 an hour because she's still on Centrelink and she wants to make some extra cash. When I get asked questions that are as complex as this, and I can just hear people saying, it's not that easy for me. Everything is as easy or as hard as you want it to be. I promise you. Firstly, knows the answer to 100% of the questions that you don't ask. So maybe you have a bigger community than you think. You're just not willing to have those conversations and set up the structure that you need. And perhaps you like being stuck in your excuses that this is going to be too hard. So for you specifically, kids are a bit younger.
That's the thing. I've just kept telling myself, like, this season I'm exclusively breastfeeding. I've got a baby who's attached to me. So I do think I have just told myself that it doesn't all have to happen now and I've got time.
It doesn't all have to happen now and you've got time, but if you don't start planning, you will never move in the direction of what you want. So whether it's one day a week where you have a family member, whether it's hubby, where it's like, I have one day, which is my CEO day. And that day, even if it is just 6 hours where you don't have the kids at all, that's your day to get into the strategy and move the needle. And then you hire a VA to do all the implementation. My point is there's always a way. It just depends on whether you want to see the way or see the excuses. And I wouldn't say wait until they're 5 or 6 or in school. I would say just one day. Because if you had one full day of CEO day where you're not mum and you're not wife and you're allowed to fill up your own cup, you will see the needle start to move in big ways. I think what can happen as mums is our attention is so scattered and so on the kids. And, I'm looking after hubby, I'm looking after the kids, and maybe I'm going to check an email or plan this or plan that, and nothing gets done. Whereas if you are like, okay, what I'm committed to right now is maybe it's only 4 hours. It's 4 hours. I have someone that comes and looks after the kids. Maybe it's an au pair. Maybe it's not the full idea of what the future looks like, but you have to start to take steps in the direction of the woman you want to become, or you will literally wake up one day and feel like you're behind, you've got no idea, and you have all of this wasted time and resources. You're about to launch a venue. The venue could be enough for now. The documenting that journey could be enough for now. Finding what works as a mum is probably what you're going to move into to help women at this stage of their career specifically move the needle in the direction of their dreams. I think the message I want to convey is we're either finding excuses or finding a way. VAs at max should be costing you $25 an hour. Your time is worth more than that if you're going to invest in building a business. You don't need to stop being who you are just to become a mum. Sure, your priorities will shift, change, and evolve, and maybe your timeline goes from 6 months to 12 months. I think the important thing is continuously prioritizing what you value and not just allowing the excuse of, I'm a mum now, I don't matter. Because what you're saying is, to yourself specifically, is I don't matter anymore. And that can cause a lot of subconscious resentment towards yourself and towards your children.
Yeah, you're touching on something that I really want to go into, because when you were talking about your story about your childhood, there was obviously quite a lot of trauma there. So what I want to get at is, if somebody is self-sabotaging, or if they aren't living in alignment to what they actually want because they think they have to based on XYZ, all of us have some sort of childhood wounds, right? So
Literally.
going into healing journey, how do you and why do you think it's so important to work on your shit? Because like you said, you built up the 8-figure businesses and you weren't happy. So really, it doesn't come about from you making money. You have the courage, you have the goals, you know you can do it. But I really want to get into happiness and how to heal and bring happiness into your life.
the biggest thing, which is the same theme, is I was doing it for everyone else and not for me. So on the opposite end of the scale, it's like I didn't give a fuck about my child for the first 2 years because society's expectation was that, and I wasn't healed then, and I wasn't traditional. In fact, my husband stayed home and I made the money. I didn't have any softness, and I was really just operating from my masculine. So I did hypnotherapy, NLP, psychedelic therapy, all of these modalities, because when I got to this pinnacle of realizing I was unhappy, the biggest question I asked myself is actually, who am I? Because I didn't really know. And what do I want? And I think the benefit I have is because when I hit that point, I didn't ask myself who I was as a mum. I actually stripped it right back to, like, at my core, before I was successful, before I was a mum, before any of the bullshit that in my childhood that happened, like, who actually am I? And what do I want? Not what society tells me I should have, not what my trauma tells me I should have or want. What is it that I value? Why do I value it? And how am I going to make it happen? And what I discovered was I'm actually a deeply traditional woman, and I really wanted to be provided for. In my current relationship, one of the difficult things for me was actually asking for him to provide for me because I've been so independent. He literally had to like grab my face and be like, I need you to stop trusting money and start trusting me. Because for so long, I had put my trust in money because I knew when I made money, it gave me freedom and all I wanted was to be free. And so a big unraveling for me in these past couple of months has been actually I can trust him and trust him to lead and trust him to provide. And actually admit that I wanted him to provide without feeling like I had to. But what it actually touched on for me was this, I think what you're touching on is, what is your purpose here? Outside of being a mum, what's your identity and what's your purpose, and how can you have both and potentially not sacrifice being a mum for your purpose, but not sacrifice your purpose for being a mum? The healing really was taking the time, and my son actually was one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. Because I would come home from working a 10-hour day and snap at him at maybe he was 1 or 2. And I was like, oh, this isn't actually anything to do with him. This frustration is something inside of me, and I wanted to understand why. So that was the first thing. I was always frustrated at him for no real reason. He was just a kid being a kid. But because I had a lot of unprocessed trauma from my childhood, his joy and play and behavior was triggering me. So that was the first thing. Yeah, and then healing's important so you do know what's yours and what's society's. Again, I sort of look at the middle path, and I think we can pendulum swing a lot in life, and I certainly did. So I pendulum swung to success, and then for 12 months, I was literally like barefoot hippie, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to make any money. I realized in that place was there was all these people talking about freedom and change and impact, and none of them were doing anything about it because unfortunately we live in a society where freedom is bought by money. Because if you want to live off the land, you need money to buy the land in the first place. And unless someone in your union is going to go out and make $1 million and buy some land somewhere, it's not just going to be handed to you. So the second part to that is when everything got stripped away, basically for a second time in this relationship, I cook dinner. I don't clean. I have a cleaner because for me, I would rather be using that time to be on purpose. So I look at everything in my life in like, what do I enjoy? I love nourishing my partner. Like, and one of the first things I said to him, the key to a successful relationship is make sure he's fed, another F word that I'm not going to say. Fed, effed, and well rested is what a man needs. And like, send him back out to war, send him back out to provide. So in the first couple of weeks of our relationship, actually, because he celebrates my success, he celebrates my boss babe, I said to him, I won't build this business if it costs us our relationship. If it costs me my softness, if it costs us our intimacy, if it costs me any part of the woman that I've become, I don't want it. And so we laid foundations inside of our relationship that ensure that if I'm moving with too much masculine energy, basically, if I get into hustle or force too much, he will hold me accountable to drop back into my softness. So we have a practice that we do 3 nights a week. And these are just one of the few foundations we've laid to ensure that we're not sacrificing our dreams, because we have big dreams, and probably more so we have big purpose. Like, I want women to realize that wealth's available to them. And if I stop working because I also just want to lay naked in the sun and eat fruit and be a kept woman, that mission, that purpose isn't fulfilled. And he wants to help men become better partners and leaders. So when we anchor to that vision and that purpose, oftentimes my excuses get out of the way.
You actually sparked something in my mind that I remember when I was in year 10. I was the troubled kid. I was constantly in the principal's office. I struggled to learn, so I acted out instead. I went through something at school that led me into the principal's office this day, and the school counsellor that I used to go see, she said to me, like, Ebony, I think we need to look at getting you leaving school. Is there any like apprenticeship that you would want to do? And I said, well, what's the option? And she said, would you be interested in hairdressing or beauty therapy? And I can remember at that moment, my response to her was, well, I had to choose something between the two. My mum was a beauty therapist, and mum raised two of us with basically no dads around. My dad was in my life, but he was very sparse and had his own new family. And I had a belief in that moment that when I have kids one day, I won't have a man. I'm not going to, and there's no one there to help. In that moment, with that in the forefront of my back of my mind was like, I made a decision to start my hairdressing apprenticeship because I want to ensure that I could make money from home when I'm alone with my kids when he's left. And that has just come up because I can see there is two things going on. I want more than anything to be millionaire, to be provided for, not have to work. But then there's this other thing where I'm like, well, if I want to earn more money than what we are now, I need to work harder. So I'm torn.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive because I'm the same, but I don't believe it's fair for me to actually ask that of my partner if I'm not willing to contribute. And I don't want to wait 10 years because he'll probably get there on his own anyway, but if I help him, we'll get there collectively faster. So right now I could stop working and our expenses are paid. We wouldn't have the lifestyle that I like. We wouldn't have all the holidays. We wouldn't have the nice things. We would live comfortably on his earnings, but it wouldn't be enough for me. His love would be enough. Our relationship would be enough, but I want a big life. I want big things. I don't want to, like, it's almost like this little princess part of me that wants to tantrum and be like, well, I just want to be looked after. Cool. We all do, but the queen helps the king build. So cool, I could leave him to it and just be like, all right, babe, I'm taking a step back now, but we would be 5 years behind in the goals we want to achieve. And I wouldn't be feeding into my purpose either. I love seeing women claim bigger lives. I love seeing women make more money. I love seeing women go, oh, I can be soft and make money. Like that's possible too. I can be a present mum and actually do something that fulfills me. Of course you can. We make all these rules and regulations and we've just decided that we have to choose, but it's just not true. So yeah, like I want to say, yeah, I hear those two parts of you, but you have to choose whether you're willing to wait 10 years or whether you're going to be the woman that builds with him. And that doesn't mean you work as hard as him or as much as him or do the same things. We're not meant to. We're not designed to. But it is hey, I'm going to support you build your dreams and visions as much as I can, but I'm also going to focus on what lights me up so I can contribute to this empire that we're building too. I've said to my partner in 5 years' time, we're retiring me. But I've worked that into the businesses that I'm building because my coaching business, he can't just take over, but my virtual assistant business, he can. So I built these businesses with my exit in mind. So in 5 years' time, I want 5 high ticket clients in my coaching business and nothing else. And I want my VA business to be doing $5 million so it sustains the both of us. So I started these businesses with my exit in mind and I've had these conversations with my partner. Babe, I will help you build and this is the exit point for me. So how do we get there?
Incredible. You've touched on a few things that I want to go into, especially in the masculinity, because I can feel in myself when I start to get that hustle. And so I'm completely in flow with the moon. I can go through stages of being like, I don't want to show up in the world. I just am not feeling it. Then I can then I can feel the energy build inside me. It's like someone's gotten that fire up, gotten that lighter and like lit me. And then I'm like, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to start now. Oh my God, I'm feeling it. I just want to do it and I want to start. And I can feel the masculinity take over me. And I lose track on I haven't started dinner. Oh shit, it's now 5:30. No one's going to eat. So I have a fear because I've had it before. When I used to have the hair salon and had my coaching business, I am 0 or 100 and I really struggle because I get these waves of feeling like I'm locked in. And then I know that feeling doesn't come often and I'm distracted most of the other time. So then I feel like if I'm locked in, I have to do it all now and no one distract me and I can't stop. But then does that make sense? So I don't have this.
It's actually your
flow.
luteal. So women are cyclical, men are linear. So the reason men get places faster is because they're not hormonal. They go literally like this. They have emotions. They're not emotionless, but they're linear creatures. We're cyclical. So what's actually happening is when you're ovulating, so the week after your period, sometimes 2 weeks after, you have more motivation and you have more energy. So you actually need to get really good at cycle tracking and understanding when you have more fire, because it's actually just more sexual energy based on your cycle. When you understand what your cycle is, you can go, all right, this week I'm in my luteal. I am going to get someone to look after the kids for 2 days of this month, because then I'll have more space to actually plan, and then I can plan for what's going to happen in my down day. And you can start to actually work with your cycles to create movement and flow. And let's say you did get a business coach and they had monthly or fortnightly calls. You would plan your calls on the weeks that you have the most motivation so you can get the most done. And then what you need to do is give yourself permission for the week of rest. There is a week where women actually don't want to be alive almost. It's like, can the world go away? I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. And do you know what? This business I have that every month. And my partner laughs at me. He calls it, it's like also my dark femme. It's also when I have the least fucking patience with him. But we're cyclical. We're meant to be like this. It's not something to be like, oh, well, I'm not as productive. Cool, you're not meant to be. I don't book face-to-face meetings. I try not to book coaching clients because I don't feel like showing up either. But because I know that inside of myself, I will plan my business around it. And I think a message I want to convey here is the more you get into deeper relationship with yourself through healing, through tracking your cycles, through understanding what you value and what motivates you, the more you can plan your business around you, not the other way around. And I think the reason we all get so overwhelmed and think it's so impossible is because the way you think about starting a business is a very linear way. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then cool, I'm going to have a business. But we're not built like that, so it becomes overwhelming. Where if we go for 2 weeks out of 4, I'm going to be really focused, and the other time I'm going to have a VA, or I'm going to plan everything around my motivation and not the other way around, it feels a lot easier.
So if someone's listening and they are wanting to be provided for, they want more freedom, and their husband or partner isn't doing so. They're not making enough money or whatever it may be. What would you say to them?
Oh, huge question. My partner wasn't this way in his last relationship. Men become who we tell them they are. So if you're very critical, if you're telling him he's not doing enough, if you're telling him it's not good enough, if you're constantly expressing your disappointment because it's not happening, then he will constantly keep disappointing you. Is the first thing. Men move with inspiration. So I didn't actually ask my partner to provide for me. I expressed to him how it felt to never being provided for. And I didn't blame him. What did I say? I said, I actually just spoke into feeling pressure, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I wasn't good enough, feeling like I was never going to, like all of my shadow, basically, all of my shame, all of my emotions. From that place, it inspired him to want to take the pressure off me, it like activated his primal providership. And I do believe all men have it. What can happen in relationship, and this was me in my previous marriage, and I was married with the same person for 10 years. I was very critical. I was very mothering of him. I was waiting for him to fuck up so I could prove that he wasn't actually going to provide for me. And if we're not doing the healing work, if we're not looking at our shadows and our patterns and our belief systems, we think that we're like a woman in a relationship. It's actually our like 5-year-old girl and oftentimes our teenager that doesn't feel safe, and she's the one running the relationship. If you're constantly nagging, if you ask for something but you're waiting for him to stuff up on a subconscious level, and you're constantly criticizing and blaming and telling him it's not good enough, then it will never be good enough. Men need praise, and I actually used to think that it was very immature or that was mothering but I tell my partner often how proud of him I am, how grateful for him I am, and not in the big things. I mean, if he, books a podcast, I'll tell him how proud of him I am. If he spends an hour extra in presence with me or in practice with me, I tell him how grateful I am. Because we're also often waiting for the big expressions. And if the big expressions don't come, we think they're not doing good enough. But we're not actually looking for the micro ways they provide, they protect, they give us presence. The second thing is, the biggest complaint I hear is, well, my partner never has enough time for me. So we actually ask them to build us $1 million life, but then get angry at them for focusing on building the business and not giving us time and attention. Now, it's not to say that they shouldn't prioritize us as well, but you can't ask a man to build you a big life and then get mad at him for building you a big life. And this is where you'll hear things like be his peace. And it doesn't mean being a doormat, but if your man is working an 8 or 10 hour day and he comes home and all he fucking hears is, did you put the bins out? Or I'm the only one that takes care of anything in this household. If you're constantly complaining, why the fuck would he want to come home? Like, why would he want to come home? This builds over years and years and years of resentment being built because we're not speaking our truth and we're not asking for our needs to be met. So we have 3 nights a week, non-negotiable, where we do an intimacy practice, and it's not fucking, by the way, but we do lots of that. But we do an I feel practice. So I get to see him in his vulnerability, and he gets to see me in my vulnerability. That way he feels seen and heard. And this is a deeper conversation, but we don't lose polarity, because if men are emotional all the time, you can lose polarity. So it creates a container for him to be seen in the things he needs support with, and then for me to be seen. And I think especially if you're at home looking after everything, we can make a lot of assumptions. Me and my partner don't assume. We ask the big questions, we ask the small questions, we express our needs clearly. If we have an argument, which I don't even really call them arguments, or we hit a trigger or a tension point in our relationship, we actually speak about what the trigger was and how we can support each other to not react in that way in the future. But this is why healing is so important, because it bleeds into everything. So yeah, to answer your question specifically, if your husband isn't providing and he isn't stepping up, he probably feels a lot of shame and guilt and insignificance. And you need to learn, it's your responsibility actually as a woman to learn how to love him better so he leads better. And
what would that look like?
Love him better so he can lead better?
Yeah, and nurture him better with your words. And what would that look like?
So there's 2 things here. Don't do it if it's not genuine. So probably what you're going to have to do, and the biggest complaint I hear is men are meant to lead. My man's not leading me. Firstly, women lead love. So in our biology, our chemistry, our natural state, our natural foundation, and both men and women are actually masculine and feminine, or alpha and omega, but men tend to have more masculine or alpha qualities and women tend to have more omega or feminine qualities. Women's biology makeup, we have babies, is love. We are focused on love. We want love. That's all we actually want in the world is love. Men's biology is purpose. They need something to do it for. So my partner's constantly telling me, you're my purpose, not as in his world doesn't revolve around me. His world revolves around his mission, but it's like the way in which I love him gives him more motivation to show up better as a provider and a protector. But I started that because I became so devoted to learning how to pour back in. Before he came, I wasn't in a relationship for 4 years. I learned how to communicate in a way that wasn't shameful or wasn't like putting like backhanded compliments, like telling him that was good, but almost not good enough. So a really great resource for women is Queen Codes by Alison Armstrong. Or Keys to the Kingdom, actually. Read Keys to the Kingdom first and then Queen Codes. The biggest mistake that I see is we expect men to be women. We actually expect them to think like us, feel like us, act like us. And then when they don't, we get angry at them.
Yeah, because I'm
So
just thinking how much I can do this. I can think, oh, I just like it's in my mind, but I'm like, well, you should just know. And I know we all do it.
we all do it. And I used to do it as well. And again, my ex-husband, I wasn't like this with. It's because I ruined that, and he did too, but because we ruined that relationship because neither of us at my ex-partner were willing to do the work, I was so committed to understanding how and why. And so I spent 4 years studying men, basically, and relationships and communication. And then I met my partner, and he was the same. He was in a 12-year relationship, and he wasn't this man at all, at all. I witness firsthand the way that I've learned to love and communicate, how it changes him. Like I watch it in real time. Like sometimes I feel like I'm in a dream because I'm like, wow, that really worked. And I'm not doing it to manipulate him. This isn't, and Alison says it in her book, it's like your promise has to be to not learn this to manipulate men. You have to go into it with the intention of, I want my man to feel so loved and so supported that he's inspired to provide and protect for me. And we do that by how we communicate.
Wow. I'm going to download these books this afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. It will change.
Be stubborn. I can definitely be stubborn. And especially when we're bogged down in life. And there's something that you said before that I thought, oh, wow, is my partner. He went up to the gym the other morning and we've been so busy in life. So whenever we're in a busy season, the
self-care drops off,
right? And I, especially with him, he's like full tunnel vision and that's it. Like there's no balance to any of it. And
yeah.
he went up to the gym, but he helps me out when needed. And he's like, do you need me to help you make breakfast this morning or whatever it may be? Or do you want me to come in and I'll make dinner? Or he might come in and make lunch. When you were talking about when you told your partner that you're proud of him, it just reminded me that the other day, for the first time in a long time, I felt so proud of him. He set his alarm. I didn't know he was setting his alarm for before we all woke up, and he went to the gym and then came back. And I was like, that afternoon when we were debriefing the day on the couch, I said, I'm so proud of you for doing that. And it's funny because if he were to get up and make us breakfast, I don't feel proud. When he takes time for himself and chooses himself and leads himself, that's when I feel most proud of him.
If a man is collapsed on himself, so doesn't take care of his body, it's actually one of the ways in which we judge them for not being masculine enough. One thing that just came to me is as well, it's not a man's responsibility to hold us 24/7. And so back to this healing piece is the reason my relationship is so good is because I spent 4 years learning how to hold myself. So we have a lot of chaos. We actually have a lot of thoughts in our mind as women. What we get wrong is we don't speak those thoughts out, so we then loop in crazy. Like honestly, if someone was to plug into my mind, you'd be like, this bitch is nuts. But when I'm looping or when I feel crazy, I will actually speak those words to him so he understands the experience that's going on inside of my head. So even things where it's like, I know this isn't true, but I'm making your lack of presence mean that you don't love me anymore. So another thing, and you'll learn this in the books, is the way you communicate has to be I. It can't be you make me feel or you did this. It is things like I make your focus on work mean that I'm not important, or I make your absence on a Friday night because you want time with your friends mean that you don't love me, whatever it might be. Nobody changes when even kids, like you want to talk about, like kids don't change when you yell at them. They change when they feel safe and loved enough to change. Yeah, I just think that the biggest thing in relationships is actually communication. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to appreciate each other. We're too scared to actually be seen in some of what we truly want. So we don't ask for our needs to be met, and then we get angry because our needs aren't met, but we actually haven't asked for our needs to be met. Like the piece he said before, and I just assume he should know. No. In the best way, men are dumb to our thoughts. They're not dumb creatures. I love and respect men so much, but we just expect them to be able to read our minds. They can't. I promise you, they can't. My partner would be like textbook perfect masculine in some he's a very human man, but in the way that he catches on to what I need. And we practice this 3 nights a week. We have teachers that we go to once a month. And his biggest complaint of me still is like, I can't read your mind. Because we just think, well, he should know. You know, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah.
Communicate, over communicate. And then I'm just going to touch on the sex piece, because most of the reason relationships are failing is because you're not having enough sex, and sex is important in relationships. So while we're on this vein, if you're not having sex, it's because you have hurt each other, and it doesn't need to be cheating. It's not in big ways. So my teachers say that the reason that you're shut down sexually is because you've swallowed one too many no's. So let's say a no could be as simple as, is it okay if I go have drinks with the boys tonight? And you actually want to say, no, I would really value time as a couple because we haven't really spent time as a couple. And you don't speak that truth. Relationships to thrive, you can survive in a relationship without it, but if you want to thrive in relationship, you need to look at all the ways in which maybe your business is coming before intimacy, for the men and the women, maybe your kids are coming before intimacy. The foundation of a good relationship is intimacy. So emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. Without that, you will start to feel like housemates, not lovers. It's important that you have both.
I am now reflecting, we've gone through stages of our life of not owning a TV. And one thing that I need is that communication and talking. And it doesn't even have to be about anything in particular, but just talking. And so does he. But now just reflecting, when the block started a few months ago, when the kids are in bed, I come back up on the couch and put the block straight on. And it kills it, because we went through a really large period where we wouldn't allow ourselves to watch any shows that are addictive, and then what we would do is, once the kids were in bed, we'd go on the couch and we would literally look at each other and talk, and my knees would always be pointed to him, and I felt my needs being met. So I'm like, well, he now wants to listen to me and he's interested in listening to me. And that's one of my love languages, is being able to have somebody on the receiving end wanting to hear where I'm at and can handle all of my chaos. He knows this. We had this conversation a few years ago, actually, is that I would start to want to have those big, deep conversations at 8 o'clock at night when he was wanting to go to sleep. And so over years of him going, Eb, let's talk about it later, because I was starting to pipe up at 8:30 and I was wanting to rattle off all of my thoughts and feelings and grand goals and everything, and he was shutting me down. It felt like I was shut, where he was just going, let's talk about it later. It's 8:30 at night. This is my bedtime. I have to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Over the years, I told myself that he didn't want to hear me, so I stopped talking to him. It took us years to realize that. And when we realized that and we had that conversation, I said, before intimacy, I need to feel heard, and I need to want to hear me. And when we talked about this, actually, it was a pivotal moment in our relationship, and I talk about it with so many of my friends. From that moment forward, when I started to talk, he dropped everything he was doing and looked me in the eye. And you could tell sometimes he was like holding in the yawn. He's like not looking at the time, but he'd put down his phone and he would give me his full body. His shoulders were open. He was fully looking at me. I would talk. At the beginning, I'd feel guilty. Like, oh, I know you don't want to be here right now. I know you want to go to bed. And so I'd rush and I'd feel guilty. But over the course of the period of time, I no longer felt guilty. So then I started to feel safe. And then that's when it leads to greater intimacy, because that's actually what I want.
Yes.
And I know now, when I've actually, even in my friendships, is the people that actually just reach out and be like, how are you? And when you're like, oh, no, I'm good. No. Give me it all. I'm here to hear you all. And this is something I've struggled with motherhood, because you get friendships. So me and my mum group, we've been friends for nearly 3 years, 3 years in January. And we are so close. We speak every day. We are all shoulder to shoulder in parenting. I learned so much off these women. What they've taught me is something I'm so grateful for. But what we realized a few months ago was that we actually didn't know anything about each other, because no one has the time, and you've got your kids running around distracting you. Everyone's got babies on the boob. Like, there's kids everywhere. It's a different season. And so we actually had to start making time for, let's do stuff without the kids, because we actually all want to get to know each other. And that's when I felt my love was reciprocated from them, when it's like, oh, you actually have time for me, and vice versa. And that's me realizing that's my love language.
Mhm.
Like, I want to be heard, and I want the person actually asking. I can fucking tell when someone actually doesn't give a shit and they're just asking and they're distracted and
Yes.
their their phone's in their proximity, or they're in a rush to go to the next person's house because they've just stopped in, and you can tell when people actually want you. And anyway, I am going on a tangent, but bringing it back, I need to make sure that those nights happen, because when I want to work on my business, when I want to work on content, it is at night when the kids are in bed and I'm on the couch. And so unfortunately that isn't happening, and it's just made me realize we definitely need to dedicate those and make it a priority to have those nights, because I definitely need it to feel that love. Like, cook me breakfast every day, do everything for me. I guess if that isn't first, I don't think if I'm pulled out of my head either. Like, I need that safety of, like, I'm here to listen to you. Let's go.
Mhm. Your body won't open unless you feel seen or heard. It's like the thing most people get wrong is, and again, for all the men listening, foreplay doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts at the conversations at the dinner table. It starts in, do I feel seen and heard? And then you want intimacy. Otherwise, it just feels like a routine, or like, oh, he just wants sex, versus, wow, he really was present with me for 30 minutes, an hour while I downloaded. I really love this man and I appreciate this man. And like, yeah, I kind of want to worship the man that he is. And that's why I want to have sex with him. Looping this all back to business, and because you said sometimes I either have to choose basically the content or the intimacy. If you lose your relationship for success, you won't keep your success, because it cost you. Like, my big businesses cost me my marriage, because I invested all of this time and attention in my business. And then I looked back and I'm like, oh shit, we've just spent the past 6 years growing apart, but I didn't care. Whereas now our relationship is at the cornerstone of everything. The way we parent, the way we build business, like that is the what we call ground zero. So we have 3 nights a week of connection, non-negotiable. We often connect more, but we don't have young children. But for 3 nights a week, like that's minimum, nothing else. I don't care. And we've both had to focus on locking that in and making sure it works. Then what you need to do is structure your time for your content and whatever else it is in a way that's going to, and this is why I say, like, if you can have 1 day a week, even start on 1 day a month where you don't have the kids, where they're at, I don't know, homeschool or whatever it might be, because you can then batch your content and still feel like you're making progress in your business and in the way that you're going. We're either going to make things feel harder and more complicated than they are, or we're going to find a way to make it work. And I think that's the message that I want to leave everyone with is, yeah, it would be easier if our partners were millionaires and we could just have the lifestyle we wanted and lay around naked in the sun and whatever else. But if that's not true, like, I think we could have so much fantasy in, oh, well, maybe if I just had a different partner who would provide for me. It doesn't work that way. There's a maturity that I think a lot of women need to find. And this was what was true for me, in that if you want the big life, you have to be willing to work with your partner to get it. And that's not saying a 9 to 5 job or going out and working for someone else or killing yourself to make money. It's building foundations of what you want your life to look like and continually having those conversations. I think it was 3 weeks into this relationship, we got out a whiteboard and we were like, how much money do I make? How much money do I want to make? How much does he make? How much does he want to make? And at that point in our relationship, I said, I don't want to work in 2 years' time. So we had that conversation, and everything we're building towards is so I can step back. But I don't expect him to do it alone, because we are such same team. Like, we are the same team in everything. And when you get on the same page and you're operating the same team, you're not angry at him if he spends a bit more time working. You fill your own cup first, because a lot of resentment is built because the husband's out filling his cup, going to the gym, building a business, being fulfilled. And a lot of mums are then like, well, what about me? I haven't gone to the gym. I'm not pouring from an empty cup. But we often do that to ourselves because we're not willing. And my partner actually says, choose your hard. Building solid foundations can be hard if you've started from shaky foundations, but it's not as hard as living in a life that you actually resent.
I've got so many notes here that I've been noting down to dive further into. Women and softness. if we can see that we can be quite hard, what do you think the first step in is to being soft without feeling like, because I've seen this on socials, right? And then the man or the woman will be like, oh, you can just say, hey, babe, and whatever the question might be. And I'm like, is he like, what the fuck have you taken if I just turned around and said something like that?
Yeah.
So can we practice softness and get to softness if that's not been the language we've spoken in our relationship? Me and Iz have been together for 10 years. Like, he's used to me being blunt and to the point. And my goal is definitely to become softer. How do I do that?
Yeah, cool. Great question. The books are going to help, firstly. Have a conversation, though. I think that the biggest thing is, it's like, babe, I've realized I've been operating in such a masculine way for so much of my life. I also want to erode the illusion that being a mum's feminine, by the way. Being a mum is actually the most masculine thing you can do. Why? Because our child becomes the center of attention. And when you understand the dynamics of masculine and feminine, or alpha and omega, our children are the most, whether they're a boy or a girl, they become the most feminine thing in the room because they will die without our full attention. And the feminine is actually really selfish. She only puts her attention on herself. So to answer your question specifically, I catch myself communicating in a very blunt, direct way because that is how I was also raised and the way I communicated. It is jarring to me now and to my partner when I subconsciously slip into basically dictatorship rather than asking. Now, if you've been this way for 10 years, especially in your relationship, it can be jarring for you and for them if you stop trying to control. And we can then get resentful towards our partner if they don't realize that they need to lead more. This is where I went wrong with my ex-husband, is I just woke up one day and I was like, well, now I'm feminine and I'm not leading at all. But for 10 years, I'd taught him that I was fucking in charge. I ruled this household. I was making all the decisions. And he better just fucking do as I say or he's going to be in trouble. Basically, that's the tone that I set in my household. So when I decided that I wanted to be softer and surrendered, he fucking had no idea what to do with himself because I told him that I was in charge for 10 years. So it's a very real thing. Communicate. Let him know what you expect of him. Like, babe, when I ask for this, I would love it if you could do this. But when he gets it wrong, and I say when he gets it wrong because he will, you don't get to tantrum. You have to have grace and you have to say, I love that you tried. I'm so grateful for all the ways in which you're showing up right now. I'm so grateful for the ways in which you're trying to meet me in my desire to be less controlling and less in my masculine. Because the second that we tell them that they did it wrong, they won't want to try again. They literally say, what the fuck is the point? I can't get it right anyway. And then it is literally about the small things. So you don't have to flick a switch overnight. What I actually started with was presence with tea. So I would get my tea cup and I would stop every time I drank tea, and this was my anchor. And I would literally just like drop into my body. And as I sipped my tea, I would just be really present with it and really, really like feel what it was like to drink tea. Not, fuck, I'm a mum and I have 1,000 things. I just need to, no. Every time I had tea, I would stop, I would slow down, I would be really present, and I would learn to soften into the experience. So if you're wanting to start that journey, and if you've probably, and most women do, I'm going to say 90% of relationships the woman actually leads, especially in Western society. Don't be hard on yourself and don't be hard on them, and make small incremental changes. Make a game of it, but bring him along for the journey. Don't just expect him to pick up on these cues that you've shifted. Because he won't. I promise you, he won't.
Can't help but to laugh throughout of all of this. Oh, that's so funny. Funny when you said, oh, I listened to this podcast today and I just became feminine and yeah, he's going to lead tomorrow. Guilty. Oh, so guilty.
We do it. We do it. It took, I kid you not, it took me 4 years of like really intentional rewiring of my nervous system, rewiring of my belief systems. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. And me and my ex-partner are such good friends now, like we're besties almost, because I stopped getting angry at him for everything he wasn't doing and started appreciating him for everything he was. And sometimes even I'm like, even my ex-husband's a different man, but he's not. He did nothing. I did it. I changed the way I communicated. I changed the way I felt self in my own body. And that's what you need to realize. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be one podcast, and it's going to have need a lot of conversations with you and your partner, because they need safety too. If you normally make all the decisions and then you all of a sudden want them to start making decisions, they need to know that it's safe to do that. My partner said to me the other day, and this is the small ways in which we do it. He said, "Babe, what do you want for dinner?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't care. I can't make up my mind. You just choose." And then he said, "Great, we're having Indian." And I said, "No, I don't want Indian." And he was like, "You just fucking told me to choose and I chose, and you told me it wasn't good enough." And I was like, "Wow, I really did. I'm sorry."
This is so good. This is the stuff I actually started learning with Holly. Like, this is years ago, and she said that, and because I started going down the masculine, feminine framework, and I see it all the time now. It's actually really dangerous for women to start learning the masculine, feminine framework, because they then go, "I want them to lead," and they're not leading, and they're incapable of leading, and blah, 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 blah. And as opposed to, like you said, it does start with us. And it wasn't until my own, not just healing journey, but started reading all the books and the audio books and the podcasts and doing the, what's it called? Like self-help, like sort of things, and learning. And I remember feeling that resentment because he wasn't doing that. He's not reading any books. Like, and nobody in my life that's ever hurt me is working on themselves. I'm doing it all. So I get this narrative and this story in my mind, in which it's fucking true sometimes, I'm just going to say. But I remember feeling that resentment towards him, because I was like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But it wasn't until I learnt what you're saying that it's actually, Holly actually helped me with this. And for everyone listening, Lezley and I actually met inside of one of Holly Loxton's money manifesting 12-week containers. I can't remember what she said, but it was about me. And it was so true. I actually had to be okay with, I can't control him. If he wants to read and do other things, that's fine. And it took me years to understand that. And when I did, it actually was like so healing. And I've seen within my friends and stuff who have gone down that route of the feminine and the masculine framework, the resentment they've had for their man and trying to change him from who he's actually not. But really, it comes down to the women's programming of the safety net.
But also, men respond. So actually, your husband, partner is the way he is today because you taught him to be that way. You think maybe you didn't because you're not getting the outcomes that you want. But I promise you, the way you talk to him, the way you either celebrate him or don't celebrate him, the way you communicate to him, he is the way he is because of you.
Can I just
Nobody
interject
else.
for a second?
Literally.
Women wear so much responsibility. Like, there is so much responsibility. My kids, at the end of the day, like, I think about it all the time. Like, my mum has more pressure on her than my dad does. Like, I know I have more pressure on me than what Izzy does for our kids.
I don't believe that's true, though. Men just don't communicate it in the way that we communicate it. I do not believe that that's true. Because men want to provide and protect, and maybe you think that they don't care, but secretly they're sitting there in their car for an hour after work thinking, I'm a piece of shit because my wife is unhappy. They just don't communicate that to us because society has told them that they shouldn't. Men care and have way more responsibility than we think, and especially if we want to be provided for, we just whinge about it more. We have more spaces to talk about it. If a man got on a podcast and said, I want X, Y, Z, half the fucking world would laugh at him. But it's true. Everyone has the same level of responsibility. Everyone does. Women just have more space to speak about it. I actually disagree. If a man has more responsibility because they're responsible for keeping the house intact. We're responsible for the tone and the energy inside the house. They're responsible for the house itself, the container that's holding them. Now, not all men are going to rise to that, but I promise you, if they're not rising to that, it's because of you haven't set standards and boundaries. So along the line, they've acted like children and you've allowed it because you don't value yourself enough. Two, we speak to them like they're children, so they start to behave like children. If you're one of these women that say, you've got 2 kids, but you say you've got 3 because you treat your husband like a child, that's on you. It's not on your husband. So yeah, I get and clearly I get passionate about this. I get that we have so much responsibility, but we actually have so much more power than we realize we have. And because we want to give that power away, or it's too hard, or I want to act like a princess and not have to have any of these responsibilities, we then complain about the lives that we build. Like, I complained about my ex-husband. I complained about my life, even as a millionaire, because it was never enough for me. The second I took responsibility, the second that I stopped caring about he's now my ex-husband, but that is because our values weren't aligned. What we realized was after 10 years, we never actually had a conversation about what we value and what we want from life. Because when we actually had that conversation, it was like chalk and cheese. I wanted to go this direction. He wanted to go this direction. And we probably shouldn't have even had a kid in the first place. In fact, we were the quintessential couple that were talking about splitting up, and then I fell pregnant. Yeah, to loop this all back, your man behaves the way he behaves because of you, nobody else. Your lack of boundaries, your lack of self-worth. Yes, they have to work on themselves. I'm not sitting here saying that it's all on us and men do nothing. But if we've taught them to behave in a certain way because we feel safe when we can control them, and then we want to undo that after 10 years, they're going to need a little bit more than 6 months to actually get on board with the new plan. Your man loves you. I promise you, your man loves you. He wants what's best for you, but his inadequacies that he's feeling inside, especially because of the way society piles on them, the way that we tell them consciously or subconsciously that they're not enough. They have all this internalized pressure and doubt and shame. And then we wake up one day and we're like, cool, we're changing the dynamics of this relationship. And I've done 6 months of studying Tantra, and this was what was true for me and a lot of women I speak to. So now you just change. I changed, you changed. But they need time to feel safe in that. They need time to know that this isn't a game or a trick, or that they have space to fail. I think the biggest thing is they don't want to let us down, and that if we've changed the narrative and they've got to learn a new way of being, they're afraid of failing just as much as we are. So we need to give them some grace. I know from experience, because me and my ex-husband weren't meant to be together, but I was actually a bitch when I left him, because the reason I left him was because he wasn't doing the work. Knowing what I know now is if I had have waited another 6 months and actually stopped pressuring him and actually started invite him to meet me in the new frequency that I was setting and the new standards that I was setting, he would have met me there. Because he meets me there as my friend now, but that came from me, not from him.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. So, Lezley, for those listening, if anyone wants to work with you, how do you help women and men or couples? What does that look like?
Yeah, so actually in Yelling Up, me and my partner have a 2-hour workshop, October 25th, I believe it is, in the Yelling Up Festival. So we have a couples workshop on how to communicate and the foundations of having a good relationship. So you can find me on Instagram and I'll send you details about that. And then I also have a workshop in Perth on October the 3rd, which is all about the psychology of millions. So how you do build the foundations of having $1 million business, if that's what you want.
Incredible. And what is your socials, Lezley?
At Lezley Kaye, but check the show notes for how to spell it, because I like to be different. It's LezlyKaye.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. I definitely took so much out of it, and I know the person listening in here today would have too.